in the illusion of money. Now, to kick things off, I'll briefly kind of describe in simplest forms and fashions and terminology the definition of these terms. Now, bond, debt, and collateral. A bond is it's a security, an IOU. You lend money to a person, an institution, or it could be someone could lend you something to a sovereign nation. Essentially, you're lending money with the hope of something in return. Typically, it's with an instrument like interest instruments, and that interest could be 2%, 5%. If you're a bank, you might be doing for less than 0.001%. But it's the intent that you're going to receive something in the back end for lending out this money and taking on that risk of lending that obligation. Now, a debt is just something you owe, and collateral is usually something put in place that if you fall short on your obligation, they have some way of collecting and getting recourse if you fall apart. Now, this is when it gets a little tricky. Now, since 1971, the United States dollar has been severed from its collateral. So essentially, it's a free-going currency backed by the faith of the United States government. And that was decided upon and agreed upon. And it's even utilized the dollar is actually utilized. You can't even transact even in anything but the dollar. As you can see, that could probably be a problem because there's nothing backing it. There's no collateral. There's nothing to hold on. So essentially, it's an IOU. It's in a debt in itself. Now, with that being said, if you look at the dollar, if you really analyze it, then it could be considered kind of a bond or essentially another debt. And debts and bonds are really just a kind of a claim on something of value. What makes this even more complicated, and I'm probably not doing the best job, but I want to really emphasize the importance of it, is if we can consider the dollar being a kind of a bond or a debt, then these bonds can then be utilized as collateral to backstop other forms of debt. And essentially, the banks have been utilizing this as a basis to trade with, and it becomes not only that they use the bond, which is a debt, they take on even more riskier debts with that bond, and then they pile that on with some additional risk, betting on the shell oil play, which that might give a yield of like 7-8%, but there's information that's even saying that they haven't even reached the shale oil game hasn't even reached its peak in terms of what it can be able to do. And so the likelihood of it being paid back is probably unlikely. So we now live in this age where bonds and debts are now used, these claim checks are now used as collaterals, and then they're swapped. It's insanity because at any moment it can break, because there's someone at the back end holding this. And if they don't meet that obligation, the whole cookie crumbles, for the lack of a better term. Now, the illusion that bonds and debt not only use as collateral, but they also use as essentially money. What you have in the bank account, what you use in your 401k, is somehow backstopped by these bonds and debts, and which are supposed to be utilized as collateral for something of value. Now, it's just not the United States doing this. The rest of the major countries are functioning on this as well. But the difference is that they're buying in mass production gold, oil, and taking up all the resources because they know these collaterals eventually have to be backed. There's only a finite amount of things that you can actually purchase with this. And it's already beginning to unravel, and that's why it's so important. Greece is already a backstop of what is going to come to the United States, one way or form or fashion. Your money, and if you don't think that's going to happen here, you need to think again. Detroit they had a bond issue, which caused a more of a problem. And I'm getting touching service because it actually was the retirement that went along with it as well. We need to pay attention to these things, guys, and especially in our community. Remember, the information age is not just for entertainment. It can be utilized to understand the financial quagmire that we're in. It's extremely important that we utilize those terms. And even though I might have not done the best job explaining it, just know that when it comes to these different issues, debts, bonds, collateral, they're all the same. And they all function as a backstop for what we consider to be the illusion of money. If this is the case, in 2008, we just saw a small portion of these bonds going bad. But it's been stated and reported that the banks have even more on their balance sheets than they had before with these bonds and these debts. And again, it's all backstopped by nothing that has nothing of collateral behind it. And they're utilizing the dollar. They're not even utilizing the dollar itself. They're just utilizing the bond and not expecting any counterparty risk that someone's going to not meet their obligation. And they keep backstopping and backstopping, building this continuous pyramid of this stuff. It's insanity. Even explaining it seems like grown adults wouldn't even come up with something this creative. But we live in the world of illusion, and the illusion is money. So if you can do anything from this and get the best aspect of it, is just start taking that illusion, whatever it is, that paper that you hold, that dollar or that whatever currency you have, and start translating and buying something of value, whether it be gold, silver, food, rice, because this illusion is coming to an end. And in my next video, we're going to be talking about pensions, and after that, following about student loans as well. Again, remember, the information age is not just for entertainment. We need to be aware of how financial matters control everything that we do, especially in our communities. Until next time.